Professor Muyiwa Falaye, the Registrar and Secretary to Council, Mr. Bosede Wycliffe, the Bursar, Mrs. Oluwafumilola Adekunle, the University Librarian, Professor Olatokunbo Okiki, the Dean, Faculty of Law, Professor Abiola Soni SAN, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you to the 458th inaugural lecture of the University and the 12th in the 2025-2026 academic session. The lecture, titled Law as an Instrument of Social Engineering, a Scholar's Contribution to Criminal Law and Criminal Justice Reforms in Nigeria, will be delivered by Professor Akeem Olajide Bello of our Department of Public Law, Faculty of Law. Born on Wednesday, 5th April 1967, Professor Akeem Olajide Bello, an Ijebu man from Shagamu in Ogun State, graduated from the University of Benin with an LLB in 1990. He passed the bar qualifying exams at the Nigerian Law School and was called to the Nigerian bar in 1991. A proud alumnus of UNILAG, he has a Master of Laws degree and a PhD in substantive criminal law from our prestigious and incomparable Faculty of Law. Professor Bello's remarkable law career dates as far back as his service year at Chief R.A.D. Abbas & Co. in Ibadan. Thereafter, he worked briefly at Chief Gani Fahimi's chambers and I.O. Iluyomade & Co. His academic career, which spans nearly 3 decades, began in 1995 when he joined the Faculty of Law of Ogun State University, now Olabisi Onabanjo University, as an assistant lecturer. In 1998, he joined the service of the Faculty of Law, University of Lagos as Lecturer 2, and rose through the ranks to become a professor in the Department of Public Law in 2022. His area of specialization, substantive criminal law, reflects a scholar deeply concerned with the moral and institutional foundations of society. His scholarship has helped shape contemporary conversations on anti-corruption law, plea bargaining, environmental protection, human rights enforcement, and constitutional governance. Within the university, Professor Bello serves as faculty chair for quality assurance and Servicom, as well as the chair of quality assurance in the Department of Public Law. He is a prolific author with books and numerous articles in both national and international journals, earning him recognition beyond Nigeria's borders. Beyond publication, Professor Bello has served as Senior Special Assistant to the Governor of Lagos State on Public and Constitutional Law and as a part-time Law Reform Commissioner in Lagos State. He was a key member of reform committees that drafted the Administration of Criminal Justice Law in 2007, Criminal Law of Lagos State in 2011, and numerous other transformative legislations currently shaping public finance, procurement, judicial, administration, sentencing, and public accountability in Lagos State. His consultancy footprint extends internationally. He served as foreign law expert in criminal prosecution for the United States Department of Justice and as an expert on Nigerian criminal law in proceedings at the International Dispute Resolution Center in London. While working with the British Council, the European Union, and United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, he has designed and delivered training programs for judges, magistrates, prosecutors, and law officers across Nigeria. Professor Bello is a member of the Nigerian Bar Association and Nigerian Association of Law Teachers. He has represented Nigeria in conferences and professional engagements across Europe, North America, Asia, and Australia as a worthy ambassador of the UNILAG brand. Beyond titles and publications, Professor Bello is a man of faith and family. He's an assistant pastor in the Redeemed Christian Church of God and is happily married to Catherine Warith-Teyede Bello. Their marriage is blessed with children and grandchildren. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I now invite Professor Akeem Olajide Bello to deliver his inaugural lecture.
The Vice Chancellor, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academics and Research, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Management Services, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Development Services, the Registrar, the Bursar, the University Librarian, the Provost College of Medicine, Dean of Law and other deans present, members of the University Senate, heads of Department of Public Law, other heads of department present, distinguished academic and professional colleagues, distinguished non-academic staff, administrative and technical, your lordships, spiritual and temporal, your royal majesties and highnesses, dear students, dear family and friends, gentlemen of the press, print, electronic and virtual, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. The outline of my lecture. The beginning. My professional life started at Chief Ganifahimi Chambers, where I worked briefly, and then I moved on to work with I.O. Iliomade and Co. for 3 years. And that was a place where I really developed as a lawyer and as a legal practitioner. And after the 3-year period, I had a brief period of sole legal practice. And during that period, my divine conviction that I'm ordained to be a law teacher, which I had had previously, returned, and it became irresistible. And I then transitioned into academia by joining the Faculty of Law of the then Ogun State University as a junior trainee fellow in 1995, and I was appointed a junior trainee fellow, which is the equivalent of an assistant lecturer. And that appointment was facilitated by Professor Helen Doris Afejugu. The focus of my research and teaching. Madam Vice Chancellor, the focus of my research, teaching and community service is substantial criminal law and criminal justice. I joined the Department of Public Law, Faculty of Law, University of Lagos, the incomparable faculty, in 1998. And I was invited to teach criminal law by late emeritus Professor Adedokun Adeyemi, who in his lifetime is easily the most renowned Nigerian professor of criminal law. And I was mentored by 2 great other Nigerians in the person of distinguished Professor T.A.I. Oshipito SAN and Professor Ayodele Ashenua. Their mentorship enabled me to have a grounding in criminal law, because when we were in Uniben as an undergraduate, I didn't have any fond memories of criminal law. But here was I dragged into teaching it, and the rest, as they say, is history. Philosophy of my teaching and research. What does a law teacher do? Madam Vice Chancellor, a law teacher identifies and explains the law clearly, interrogates legal principles, detects gaps and challenges, and proposes reforms to address those challenges. Law as an instrument of social engineering. Law shapes society and behavior. Research drives legal improvement. Teaching influences future practitioners. From research to reality. My research over the years has influenced legislative reforms. Some of the ideas generated in my research have been transformed into real laws, and I've also been privileged to be involved in the direct implementation of some of the laws I've assisted in shaping. Entry into government and reform work. After working in Unilag for a number of years, I was invited by Mr. Olajide, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, the then Honorable Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Lagos State, to serve Lagos State government as a Senior Special Assistant to the Governor on Public and Constitutional Law. And I was an SSA for a period of 4 years, between 2007 and 2011. And my department and the university graciously allowed me to go on leave of absence, for which I'm forever grateful. In my role as Senior Special Assistant, I had a responsibility for initiating criminal justice reform, drafting legislation, offering legal advice to the government of Lagos State. I was also involved in policy development. The reforms we implemented at the Lagos State Ministry of Justice is chronicled in a book I co-authored with the then Honorable Attorney General, Mr. Olajide SAN. The book is titled Ministering Justice, the Administration of the Justice Sector in Nigeria, and it was published in 2018. That book chronicled our various reform efforts while we served with the Lagos State government between 2007 and 2011. Contributions to reforming criminal code of Lagos State. While I was serving as the Senior Special Assistant to the governor, I had the privilege of introducing a proposal to reform the criminal code law of Lagos State, which had been in use for close to almost 100 years. And many areas in the law have been crying out for reforms, which we have identified in various scholarly writings. So I initiated that proposal, and His Excellency the Governor of Lagos State approved the proposal, and a committee was constituted to draft the criminal law of Lagos State 2011. And that law introduced some landmark reforms. It introduced modern criminal defenses. It eliminated obsolete legal doctrines. And the law also provided an expanded protection in sexual-related offenses. We retained in the law the offense of rape, which involves having unlawful sexual intercourse with a woman or girl without the consent of the girl. And part of the law then, and as it is now to an extent, is that spouses of female victims, lawfully married husbands, are exempted from criminal liability for rape, meaning that a husband could not in any circumstance be liable for raping his wife. We consider developments in other parts of the world which has recognized the interest of women and the need to protect their rights as distinct legal persons. But we felt that if we introduce a radical reform and criminalized rape, that could bring into jeopardy the entire reform process. So what did we do, Madam Vice Chancellor? We introduced a provision in Section 261 and introduced the offense of sexual assault by penetration. The offense as defined does not appear on the face value to criminalize non-consensual intercourse between a husband and a wife. It merely criminalizes the offense of sexual assault by penetration. But we define it in such a way that in an appropriate case, a husband could be found liable for raping his wife, because wives are not tools, they are not instruments, they are human beings with distinct legal rights. And so we crafted that law, and the provision is there. So if there is any egregious case of a husband, raping his wife, he can be prosecuted not for rape, but for the offense of sexual assault by assault by penetration. So husbands in Lagos, you need to be aware that the law has moved on. Madam Vice Chancellor, we also modernized and introduced some new crimes to deal with emerging criminal realities. Long before the Cybercrime Act of 2015, we introduced some computer-related offenses into the law. We criminalized hacking into a computer, unauthorized access into a computer, long before the Cybercrime Act came in 2015. The reforms that we implemented in that law have been documented in my book titled Essentials of Criminal Law in Nigeria, which was published in 2022 and is used by students, judges, and practitioners. The book provides a platform to explain the reforms contained in the new criminal law of Lagos. Madam Vice Chancellor, I've also been privileged to be involved in the reform of Edo State Criminal Code by virtue of a consultancy with the British Council and the European Union project in 2009. I worked with the Edo State Ministry of Justice, led then by Professor Yinka Omorogbe, and I guided the establishment of a criminal law reform committee. I guided the work of the reform, and the reforms implemented the reforms that were already implemented in Lagos, although we added some new improvements. Bribery law reform. Madam Vice Chancellor, we have got into the heart of the matter. I have spent about 5 years of my life conducting research on the offense of bribery. And my research found that the offense of bribery, although it's criminalized in Nigeria under the Criminal Code, under the Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Act, the extant laws did not clearly explain the wrongfulness in the conduct. It does not clearly explain what is wrong with a public officer receiving a property or benefit of any kind from a person engaged with him in an official transaction. And this has been identified in a number of academic literatures. So I spent about 5 years doing research on that, and my research led to a redefinition of a proposed redefinition of the offense of bribery that clearly captures the wrongfulness in the conduct, that captures the mental element. And my research found that what is wrong with bribery is that when you give a public officer or you confer on him a property or benefit of any kind in the course of official transaction, what you have done is you are inducing him to breach his duty of trust to his employer. You are inducing him to deflect from the honest and impartial performance of his official duty by virtue of the bribe that you have conferred on him. His consideration for acting or for carrying out his official duty is no longer the need to discharge the duty, but the need to fulfill an obligation brought upon him by the property or benefit of any kind that has been conferred. So while we were reviewing the Criminal Code of Edo State, I introduced to the committee, and it was accepted, and it was eventually enacted into legislation, a new section 71 and 72 of Edo State Criminal Law 2022. That new provision introduced clear, practical definition of the offense of bribery. The redefined offense of bribery captured the golden rule on the offense of bribery. And what is the golden rule? The golden rule is when you relate with a public officer and you confer a property or benefit of any kind with him in the course of an official transaction, that act is, the law perceives it as bribery because it is deemed to be intended to induce him to breach his duty of trust to his employer or to deflect him from the honest and impartial performance of his duty under the law. So the rule is, thou shalt not receive any gift or benefit of any kind from a person relating with you as a public officer in the course of your official transaction. The moment you do, that is likely to be perceived as bribery and criminalized as bribery. So our reform strengthen the legal definition of the offense of bribery and strengthen the legal framework. So, and also clearly drew the line between what constitutes bribery and what constitutes an innocent gift giving. If you offer your gift to another in the course of purely social relations and there is no official duty between the two of you, that can never amount to bribery, even if it is intended to induce the recipient to offer you a favor, so long as it is not connected with the official transaction of the recipient. Unlawful enrichment. Now, in the Edo law, we introduced a provision on unlawful enrichment. We also did in the Lagos provision, but we advanced it. Under the Lagos provision, it criminalizes unlawful enrichment by a public officer. What does that mean, Madam Vice Chancellor? If you are a public officer and you are found to be in possession of wealth beyond what can be reasonably connected to your lawful income. The law takes it that you must have acquired it illegally. The law is not interested in how you acquired it, even if you acquired it through Otromoko, or you did juju, and the thing is producing money, and you carry the money, you dump it in your bank, and maybe it amounts to 1 billion, and your lawful income at the end of a year is not up to 2 million or 3 million. The law assumes that you have acquired it illegally, and now puts a burden on you to show how you lawfully acquired it. If you can show that you won Baba Ijebu or lottery, no problem. But if you cannot, then you have committed an offense under the law as it was in Lagos, and you are liable to be tried and if convicted, sentenced to 7 years imprisonment. And the proceeds is liable to be forfeited to the state under the rules on the Addition of Criminal Justice Act, and even now under the Forfeiture of Proceeds of Crime Act. So what we now did in Edo is that we expanded the protection to cover anybody, whether you are a public officer or you are a non-public officer, so long as there is evidence that there is wealth in your possession that you cannot reasonably connect to any lawful means. So if and usually the people that are non-public officers that have such wealth usually obtains the other, laundering money for people in public offices or through one illegal means or the other. So the law takes it that even if you are not a public officer and you cannot account for your wealth, you have committed this offense of unlawful enrichment, and you are liable to be convicted, and the proceeds will be forfeited to the state. So this new approach strengthened anti-corruption framework. It enables prosecution without direct proof of bribery or other corrupt practices. The prosecutor does not have to prove that you have committed any offense. All they have to do is that we found in your account 2 billion naira, and your salary over a year is 5 million. The law now puts a reverse onus burden on you to show that you acquired it illegally. And if you cannot, then you have committed an offense. And now this has been supported by judicial precedent in Nigeria and in other parts of the world. In the case of Dauda versus Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Supreme Court sustained a legislation that imposed a reverse burden in relation to unexplained wealth. And the law allows the forfeiture of such wealth, and it aligns with global best practices. Criminal code reform in Anambra State. I've also been privileged by the grace of God to be involved in the criminal code reform in Anambra State. I also executed a consultancy, British Council, EU project, guided the process, guided the constitution of a committee. The law was drafted. The last time I checked, the law is still being processed at the Anambra State House of Assembly, and hopefully it will be passed like the one we did in Lagos and in Edo State. To God be the glory. Madam Vice Chancellor, my academic contribution to criminal law scholarship. I authored the book Essentials of Nigerian Criminal Law 2022. That book filled an important gap in the jurisprudence and in the literature. As a student of law, we all read Okonkwo and Nash. And Okonkwo and Nash is fairly dated, and newer cases, and now the criminal law of Lagos has been introduced, the new criminal law in Edo has been introduced, Ekiti has also introduced a criminal law, and so on and so forth. So there's a need to discuss and explain recent developments in criminal law in Nigeria, and my book achieved that objective. Like I said earlier, I also concluded a PhD titled Redefining the Mental Element of Bribery in Nigerian Law. And I've also authored multiple peer-reviewed publications in national and international journals. My academic journey has bridged the gap between academic and practice. My research has directly influenced legislation. My work has been used by judges, lawyers, and students. It has demonstrated the value of my academic research. Criminal justice reform. Madam Vice Chancellor, I've also been privileged to be involved in criminal justice reform over the years. And it started, very small. When I was appointed by Professor Yemi Osinbajo, SAN, the then Honorable Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Lagos State, as a member of the first Criminal Procedural Reform Committee in 2005. I was just a lecturer one day, trying to learn the law, trying to find my feet. But God has a way of lifting us up beyond our capacity. And when we submitted our report, a second committee was constituted, and I was the only member of the first committee that was appointed in the second committee. And the second committee now concluded the work, and the law was enacted in 2007 as the Administration of Criminal Justice Law of Lagos State. Madam Vice Chancellor, this law has become a model for federal and state laws on criminal justice administration in Nigeria. To God be the glory. Introduction of plea bargaining. Madam Vice Chancellor, what is plea bargaining? Plea bargaining is an arrangement where the prosecution and the defendant enters into discussion to settle a criminal matter. The defendant agreeing to plead guilty. The prosecution may agree to drop some of the serious charges and replace with lesser charges. And the defendant pleads guilty, and the parties recommend to the court a reduced sentence. And if the court finds it worthy, the court accepts the sentence and the matter is concluded. That's what plea bargaining is all about. And so while we were reviewing the Administration of Criminal Justice Law in Lagos, in the first committee, I was assigned the responsibility as a member of that committee of looking at this largely American approach and proposing a platform to implement it in Lagos State. And I did research on the practice in US and South Africa, and I proposed a framework for plea bargaining in Nigeria. By the grace of God, I was the one that drafted Section 75 of the ACGL 2007, drawing insight from the provision of the American Criminal Procedure Rules and the South African Criminal Procedure Act of 1976 or 77 or thereabout. Thereby, and it was enacted into law, and it introduced plea bargaining into the legal jurisprudence in Nigeria. And this singular provision has been accepted in the federal law and in all the laws of the states in Nigeria, modeled after what we did in Lagos. And it has transformed criminal case management in Nigeria. And Lagos is leading in its application, as we will soon see in the course of this presentation. I've also been privileged by His grace, by the grace of God, to have been involved in capacity development, training the capacity of judges, magistrates, prosecutors, and defense counsels on plea bargaining in Lagos, in Edo, in Anambra, in Cross River, across the states. And that was, again, via consultancy with British Council and European Union. So we held a number of trainings, starting with the training we held in Lagos in 2019, in collaboration with a team of facilitators from the US National Institute of Trial Advocacy. And the training was subsequently expanded in Lagos to all the magistrates. All the magistrates had a training of, I think, about 2 or 3 days on plea bargaining. And then I also drafted, as part of that consultancy, a plea bargain manual for the Lagos State Ministry of Justice. And that manual established principles, standards, and procedure for plea bargain agreements. And we also replicated this plea bargain manual in those states that I've mentioned earlier. Plea bargaining mentorship and collaboration. I've been privileged to mentor a colleague, Dr. Akeem Olajide, now an associate professor, and introduce him to international consultancy work. I've also partnered with a colleague, Mr. P.C. Okori, Deputy Director Campus. Together we delivered a capacity training in Abuja for magistrates, judges, FCT, Federal High Court, over a period of almost about 9 months, between 2024 and 2025. And this training on plea bargaining and sentencing guideline was funded by the European Union and implemented in Nigeria by the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, IDEA. Madam Vice Chancellor, we also scaled up the training to include trainings on sentencing guidelines. which is designed to promote consistency, transparency, and fairness in sentencing. And that has all the trainings we did across the state also included a component on sentencing guideline. Now, there was a data that was released from the Lagos State Ministry of Justice in 2025 that showed that between 2017 and 2025, 1,823 plea bargain proposals were received by the Office of the Attorney General. I can see the learned Attorney General on the seat. And over 1,519 were approved. And 304 were declined. What this meant is that those 1,519 cases were approved and settled through plea bargaining will still be on our court docket now, congesting the courts and creating problems and creating inefficiency and involving expenditure of cost and resources by the state to prosecute those cases. All those 1,519 cases have been concluded, and the defendants know their fate one way or the other. To God be the glory. Madam Vice Chancellor, there have been some concerns about the use of plea bargaining, but I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that these concerns have been reduced largely because now there is a legal framework for plea bargaining. Those concerns, were valid in 2005 when plea bargaining began to creep into our criminal justice system. But now all the states in Nigeria have a legal framework for plea bargaining. Some of the states have also, in the office of the AG, an administrative procedure for plea bargaining. So, and the provisions of the ACJ and ACJL on plea bargaining, introduce a number of safeguards, procedural safeguards for defendants, protecting due process rights of defendants, empowering the court to accept or reject the sentence recommended by the party. So, the court is not a lame dog. If the parties recommend a sentence, the court can say, no, I'm not accepting this sentence. I want to impose a higher sentence. And the court will then give the party an opportunity to decide whether they want to accept the higher sentence or whether they want to withdraw completely from the plea bargain process. So there is now transparency and accountability in the plea bargain process. That's a copy of my book, Overview of Plea Bargaining in Nigeria, with on plea bargaining, which I authored. And I've also authored other peer-reviewed articles on plea bargaining in Nigeria. So God be the glory. This picture is a plea bargain sensitization workshop for judiciary correspondence in Abuja in 2025. This is a plea bargain and sentencing guidelines training for prosecutors. These are prosecutors from EFCC, ICBC, NDLEA, CBN, and so on and so forth. This is a plea bargain sentencing guidelines training for judges of the Federal High Court and FCT 2025. This is a plea bargain and sentencing guidelines training for magistrate FCT 2025. Introduction of restorative justice. Madam Vice Chancellor, I've also been privileged to be involved in introducing restorative justice. Restorative justice is a system of justice that enables our system to move beyond the focus on punishing the offender. Yes, the offender will be punished, but the focus is more on promoting healing, restoration, reparation, and rehabilitation, and restoring the damage between the offender and the community, and enabling offering the offender a platform to redress the harm that has been occasioned by his offense. I've been privileged also to be involved in introducing restorative justice into Nigeria. In 2013, I was appointed National Legal Advisor, Prison Fellowship Nigeria, 2013, to liaise with the Lagos State Ministry of Justice and find ways to introduce it in Lagos State. And the then Attorney General then, Mr. Adeola Ramani, embraced the idea, consulted a committee, and we kickstarted the process by, organizing workshops, seminars for judges, magistrates, and so on and so forth. And eventually, the Lagos State Judiciary also embraced the idea. And by His grace, I developed the first draft that was adopted as Lagos State Judiciary Restorative Justice Practice Direction 2019. I also developed, in conjunction with my two colleagues, Mrs. Adeyinka Aroye and Mrs. Achere Cole, a training manual, for training restorative justice facilitators in Lagos. And subsequently, we scaled it up and trained over 100 RJ facilitators in Lagos. And then also the Lagos State Ministry of Justice established a restorative justice center in Alausa, and so on and so forth. And this restorative justice that was introduced innocently into Lagos has spread into other parts of Nigeria. It is being embraced in FCT, Delta, and Plateau State. They have come to Lagos to copy some of the things that we have done. Again, to God be the glory. This was an award that was given to me by the Honorable Attorney General, seated there, Mr. Lawal Pedro SAN, in recognition of my commitment and dedication towards the establishment and institutionalizing Restorative Justice Center in Lagos State last year. Consultancy experience, about consultancy experience, international consultancy experience, some of which was mentioned in Madam Vice Chancellor's opening speech, so I wouldn't want to waste so much time on that. Service to Nigeria, I've mentioned some of them. I've served the good people of Lagos State as a Senior Special Assistant on Public and Constitutional Law. I've also served as a part-time Law Reform Commissioner, and I've also been involved in drafting over 15 plus laws and in various other capacities. Madam Vice Chancellor, this was when His Excellency Mr. Babatunde Raji Fashola inaugurated the Lagos State Law Reform Commission. On the left, you can see my humble self, flanked by the then AG of Lagos, Mr. Adepaye, His Excellency the Governor, the then Deputy Governor, and Mr. Olashubo Shashori SAN, the then Honorable Attorney General of Lagos State. And while we were serving as Law Reform Commissioner, we compiled a new set of laws of Lagos State in 2015. To God be the glory. Service to my dear University of Lagos. I've also been privileged. Very early from the moment I joined the university, within a couple of months, I was appointed a coordinator of Diploma in Criminal Justice Administration, even when I was just trying to settle down. And subsequently, I've also served the faculty as coordinator of the Humanitarian and Refugee Studies and in various other capacities. Currently, I'm serving as a faculty chair of the Quality Assurance Committee, and I've also served the university in various other capacities. This was a certificate of recognition awarded to me for quality assurance last year. My future outlook, my current research is focused on expanding my book on essentials of criminal law to cover cybercrime and technology-related offenses. And my future research will be focused on empirical studies. There are so many areas that we need to test empirically. One is the sentencing guideline, which Lagos is really using. And we need to measure its efficiency and its efficacy. For the future, I'm looking at a system where we focus on evidence-based justice reform, strengthen Nigeria's criminal justice system, and it's important that there should be collaboration between the academia and criminal justice stakeholders. And in the faculty, in the incomparable Faculty of Law, University of Lagos, we have the capacity to deliver research, to measure what is going on and what we are achieving and what is working well and what is not working well. And if you call on us, we'll offer our services. Madam Vice Chancellor, I'm gradually winding down, and I want to move to the acknowledgement phase. I'm grateful and thankful for the mighty hand of the glorious God, the lover of my soul, and the one who ordained my life and guided it all the way. If it has not been for God, this small Ijebu boy cannot be standing before you. The management team of the University of Lagos, Madam Vice Chancellor, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, and other members of the management team appreciate your support and the opportunity to give this inaugural lecture. My parents, that's my dad, that's my mom, and there is one Ijebu boy adorned with chains and bangles and diapers and socks, looking seriously into the future. And that future, by His grace, is here today. Bello, Ogunwemimo, and other families have listed members of the Bello family, many of whom God used to support me during my schooling days. Time may not permit me to mention them all, but we can see all the names here. The Ogunwemimo family and other family members, I appreciate their support over the years. God will bless you all. Then my friends, Mr. Akijide Sadiq, he was my neighborhood mentor at Salvation Army, Kotedo Road, Ibadan, where I grew up. My friend Fatah Aderemi Suleiman, a U.S. attorney, Ms. Oyinkonsala Badejo Okusanya, we served together at MOJ, and my friend Gani Umutiu Babalola. Destiny helpers. These are the people that God used at critical stages in my life. The first is Mr. Ni Ibada. The JAM form, we are planning together to read law, to change from the Department of History, University of Ife. The JAM form closed. I couldn't have the money to purchase the form. And while we were just at our hall, I was studying history there. He said, Akeem, want to postpone JAM now? Can I loan you some money? I said, if you can. And then he was the one that loaned me the money. Without that, I would not be here today. God will bless him. And Professor Doris Afejuku facilitated my appointment at the then Ogunse University. Late Professor Emeritus Professor Adedokun Adeyemi dragged me into teaching criminal law and put me on the path to the fulfillment of my destiny. May the Lord bless his soul. Professor Kehinde Gbemisola Mowo, she was used by God to facilitate my appointment into the prestigious Faculty of Law, University of Lagos. Distinguished Professor T.A. Oshibito S.A. and Professor Ayodele Ashenua. These were the two senior colleagues who peer-reviewed my first paper. And I remember in those days, when you give your paper to Professor Oshibito, the corrections will be more than the paper. But by the time you reflect them, your paper is enriched. God bless you, sir. These are my senior colleagues in the faculty. All their names are listed there. You know, I have to mention Professor Abiola Soni, the current Dean of Law. He is a great encourager. At several times he will say, Akeem, you can do it. He does not believe you can't do anything. Akeem, you can do it. Do this thing and finish it. My brother, God bless you. And then all my other colleagues, you know, somewhere along the line, Professor Oluakemi Adekile, the one and only Iyabiji, and Dr. Asikia Karibiwa. Everybody in the faculty knows me with those two people. And then my great friend, of course, Professor Akintunde Kabir Otubu. You know, we came together from Ogunse University. Contributions to my professional life. Ganifa Emijemba's brief stint. Mr. Idowu Iluyomade Esquire of Iluyomade and Iluyomade and Co. That was where I said earlier, I really developed as a lawyer. Oh, God bless you, sir. God bless you, sir. Mr. Olajuwon Shashari SAN invited me to serve Lagos State. I've already made reference to him. And Mr. Babatunde Raji Fashola SAN, he was the governor. He offered me 2 appointments, one as senior special assistant, second as a law reform commissioner. And Mr. Adeola Ipaye has always been supportive over the years. The good Lord will bless them. Spiritual support has been offered by Pastor Bayo Olugbemi, PhD, APIC, PCR, Region 59. Professor Pastor Oluwatoyin Ogundipe, Dr. Pastor Oluwaseun Ogundipe, and the other pastors listed there, and the entire Miracle Center family of the Redeemed Christian Church of God. You can see my people wearing Ankara. And then also fellow Sunday school teachers, RCCG, I'm sure they are somewhere in the audience. And then this is the members of my organizing committee. This is the home front, my children, my first daughter, a boom boom learned friend, and my son-in-law who has now become a son, and my 2 adorable granddaughters, Mama, Naila, and Nora Baby. My daughter, Temitope Toluwani, she's not here today, but she's joining us online. Oluwaseun Ayomikun Ijebu boy, the second Ijebu boy, and then Ayomide Grace Bello, and then my sweetheart. My beloved is unto me as a cluster of campfire, with yellow flower found in Engedi, in the vineyards of Engedi. Behold, thou art fair, my Lord. Behold, thou art fair. Thou art dove's eye. Beloved, thou art fair, my beloved. Yea, pleasant. This is from the Songs of Solomon, chapter 1, verses 14 to 16. My dear, God bless you. She has supported me over the years, and I really appreciate those support. Madam Vice Chancellor, ma. To everybody here present and those joining us online, I can't see those joining us online, but I know they are there. God bless you all. Madam Vice Chancellor, here ends my inaugural.
is in our midst, former principal officers of the university, Professor Bola Obo, former DVCR, Mr. Olurotimi Shudimu Esquire, former registrar, thank you. Professor Ayodele Asenwa, who is online, former DVC Development Services. We also have amongst us mentors of our inaugural lecturer, Professor Emeritus Professor A. Adeyemi, distinguished Professor Taiwo Shipiton, and Professor Ayodele Asenwa. Thank you very much for the mentorship. Also amongst us, we have Mr. Lawal Pedro, SAN, Attorney General and Commissioner of Justice, Pastor Dr. Bayo Lubemi, Pastor in charge of RCCG, Province 19, Pastor Idu Iliyomade, Lead Pastor of Family Fellowship Church, and also a mentor of the inaugural lecturer. Mr. Adiola Ikwaye, you're most welcome. Mr. Olashupo Shashore, SAN, former Attorney General. Pastor Olushola Joseph, Pastor in charge of RCCG, Province 80. The family of our inaugural lecturer, Mr. and Mrs. Razaki Bello, and the entire family of Bello, of Wemimon, of Dusoya, and Israel families, you're most welcome. The entire RCCG Church family here present, thank you very much. We have Honorable Justice F.E. Misiri online. Thank you for coming. The children of our inaugural lecturer, Ebulua, Temitope, Luashion, and Ayomide, you're most welcome. And to the sweethearts of the inaugural lecturer and his learned friends, Mrs. Catherine Bello. Deputy Vice Chancellor, Management Services, Professor Tomiwa Falai, Registrar and Secretary, the Council, Mrs. Abosede Wycliffe, the Bursar, Mrs. Olafumilola Adekunle, the University Librarian, Professor Olatobo Kiki, the Dean, Faculty of Law, Professor Abiola Soni, SAN, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. We have just listened to the 458th inaugural lecture and the 12th in the 2025-26 academic session delivered by Professor Akeem Olajide Bello, titled Law as an Instrument of Social Engineering, a Scholar's Contribution to Criminal Law and Criminal Justice Reforms in Nigeria. Professor Bello in his lecture underscored the fundamental task of a law teacher, which is to discover the position of the law and communicate it clearly. A law teacher and researcher, he submitted, must interrogate the law, identify gaps, challenges, and problems in the application of the law, and propose reforms. Professor Bello chronicled how he used his teaching and research over the years in his field of expertise, criminal law and criminal justice, to contribute to knowledge and practice of law. From his presentation, we saw how his research and teaching of criminal law enabled him to contribute to the reform of the substantive criminal law of in Lagos State. He highlighted some of the reform ideas that he proposed were adopted and enacted as part of the criminal law of Lagos State. He also disclosed to us how, as a consultant, he contributed to the enactment of the criminal law of Edo State in 2022 and highlighted some of the suggestions he made that shaped the substantive criminal law of that state. Professor Bello also underscored the impact of his contributions to reforming law, theory, and practice of criminal justice in Nigeria. He noted his tremendous contribution in championing the use of plea bargaining in improving criminal justice delivery in Nigeria, and his pioneering efforts in training judges, prosecutors, defense lawyers, and other criminal justice stakeholders in implementing plea bargaining and sentencing guidelines in Lagos, Edo, Anambra, Cross River, and Kaduna states. From his very expository presentation, we see that the evolution and practice of restorative justice in Lagos State and how its practice has been exported to the Federal Capital Territory and several other states, how they have benefited from the outward-looking and public interest scholarship of our inaugural lecturer. You will all agree with me that Professor Akeem Olajide Bello has been a relentless contributor to public good with his mastery of criminal law and criminal justice. And from his well-delivered inaugural lecture, we see that he has his eyes set on making continuing contributions to national development. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Akeem Olajide Bello, congratulations on giving a very informative inaugural lecture with immense contribution on improving our society and the world at large. Congratulations to you and your faculty. I thank you all for coming and wish you safe return to your various destinations. I hereby declare this assembly closed.